Good evening, everybody. Hi, my name is Heather Boykman. I'm a now core member with Serving with Chagrin River Watershed Partners, and I'm here today to present Mel Hauser from Good Nature Good Nature Lawn Care Company. We will be doing a Q&A, but we'll be doing it at the end. But as we go through the presentation, you can go ahead and ask questions. We'll just get to them at the end. And this presentation is being recorded, so you can watch it later and let all your friends and families know about it. All right, Mel, do you want to introduce yourself as well, or?
I certainly will. Thank you very much, Heather. Good evening, everybody. Thank you for being here on what's turned out to be another fabulous spring day in Cleveland. Let's cross our fingers. We might get 3 in a row, but don't count on it. So tonight we're going to be talking about, as the title you'll see in a moment. Do you have that up yet, Heather? There we go. Safer for people, pets, and water. We're going to be talking about organic lawn care. A little bit, real quick, about Good Nature. Next, please. About Good Nature and myself. And then I'm going to disappear once I start my presentation so that I'm not a distraction to my slides. I'll turn myself back on at the end of the presentation for Q&A. At Good Nature, our mission statement is to make the world a better place, one organic person at a time. I hope at least one of you this evening will join that cause. Myself, I have been a Northeast Ohio resident for almost 71 years. I've lived in the west side of Cleveland with my family for the last 30 years. My environmental awareness, if you want to call it that, started about 15 years ago. At that time, I joined the Rocky River Watershed Council, which is similar to the Chagrin River Watershed Partners. And I served on the board of directors for a number of years. About 7 years ago, I joined Good Nature Organic Lawn Care in the sales department and quickly learned that I really enjoyed doing this type of thing, the public education. And so since then, I've been doing that the rest of the time. So I'm going to say goodbye right now. I hope you enjoy the presentation, and we'll talk about, we'll talk with questions afterwards. Next, please. So I'm going to mention the big white elephant that's looking over my shoulder before we go any further. The lawn care industry hasn't exactly been a friend of the environment in the past. A lot of the products that they put down on the lawn are promoted, marketed by the chemical companies who make them. And in the United States, in 2015, over almost $16 billion was spent on lawn care and gardening services by us living in homes, not by big agriculture. Next, please. It all starts in our own backyards, in my opinion. Too many people say, well, my yard isn't that big. What difference can it possibly make what I do? And it does make a difference. There are 50 million acres of lawns in America. That's about the size of the state of Florida. What you do is multiplied a million times over, not just once, but numerous times every year. So it's important to do the right things and not do what you've done, not to do just what you've always done in the past. 3 million tons of inorganic fertilizers are spread on our lawns, 1 million tons of pesticides. Next. And everything started out kind of on the right page. Back during World War II, companies developed fertilizers that definitely helped feed the world and our soldiers. They developed some pesticides that helped control malaria and other diseases. But once the war was over, there's a huge surplus of these chemicals that had been used to, a lot of it, manufacture bombs. Companies learned real quick they could make products for residential use, and they didn't waste any time marketing those. Next, please. So if we fast forward a decade, in one of the first recognized housing developments in the country, front lawns were required for homes that were being built in a community called Levittstown, New Jersey. And this kind of began America's obsession for a green lawn. Next. Let's fast forward another decade. And as we approach the 70s, what I refer to as the green lawn, white picket fence, keep up with the Joneses race began. You know, that's where one-upmanship with your neighbors started becoming important because we all lived in these little, communities. And people found out that having green, lush lawn could become a status symbol, and it was much more affordable than a Cadillac. And today that's developed into a $78 billion lawn and garden industry. That's a lot of money. So which lawn do you want? That sounds like kind of a goofy question, but how important to you is your lawn? How much time, money, and attention do you have to spend on it? And there isn't any right or wrong answer, and it'll probably change over the years as mine did 30 years ago. Our kids were at home, the dog was in the backyard, and my backyard was wall-to-wall green. But they are gone, and so is a lot of my lawn. I sacrificed some to a flower patch or a flower bed, a patch of native plants, and if I get around to it this year, I'm going to plant a veggie garden. So I'd encourage everybody to think about it and have the type and the size of lawn that's going to fit your needs. Not everybody needs the same type of lawn. Next, please. So the next few slides, we're going to tell you why we believe that organics is better all the way around. First, it's better for the environment. I'm probably preaching to the choir this evening, but these are some examples of the numerous ways that backyard lawn chemicals can affect our environment, especially the water in our Northeast Ohio area. Whether it's the alga blooms that you see there or the suds, and I'll mention that in my story in just a few moments. Dead fish, restricted swimming areas, that's the 7-mile crib in the bottom left that most of Cleveland gets all their drinking water from. Next. And with the amount, just the sheer volume of water that we drink, the environmental toxins from traditional lawn care accumulate in our bodies over time. Next. Okay, so I believe I mentioned, maybe I did, I grew up in the banks of Rocky River with my brothers, and numerous times we'd climb down the hill into the valley and play in the river. Well, this picture, and I'll give you a minute to try and figure out what it really is showing, is the cause one day for my mother to say, look, you guys can go down in the valley, but your father said don't play in the river. I know we don't have an audio connection, so I can't say, does anybody want to guess? Those are soap suds that formed in the river itself. And you can see it says Rocky River 1964. Next, please. Just another shot of detergent foam suds. And you won't see this type of pollution today. What caused this is an excessive phosphorus that was in numerous laundry detergents back in the olden days, all right? Through regulations and probably some guilt, manufacturers cut way back on the phosphorus content, and the problem eventually disappeared. This specific problem and the solution, it gives me some hope that something similar will happen with some of the chemical companies today, and they'll start becoming more organic and ecologically friendly. Next. Okay, bees, butterflies, and birds. These are pollinators, and they are absolutely vital to our food supply chain and the flowers in our backyards and the trees in our forest. It's been estimated that pollinators are responsible for 1/3 of the food we put on our tables every day. Quick story behind the bird you'll see there. I was out riding my bike and I look down on the ground and I see a whole bunch of lawn fertilizer all over the sidewalk, all over the street, and I see a dead bird. I showed it to a couple vets that I knew, and I asked them if it was possible that if the bird had eaten a couple of these pellets, you can see it, I hope, in the picture, could it harm the bird? And they said, absolutely. It could either clog up the whole system. A bird isn't that big, a couple pellets of nasty chemicals. So this is one of my, I guess this is my dead poster child for what I try to convince people. This is what can happen when chemicals are misused. Next, please. Organic is better for pets. This is my little dog, Misty. You better be quiet because she's laying on the floor right next to me. And when I take her for a walk, if I see one of those yellow flags, that means that a company has put either a chemical fertilizer or pesticide on the lawn and we steer clear. Well, somebody asked me, so what's the big deal? And I says, well, dogs don't wear shoes. All right, so they walk on something, they're going to pick it up. And as soon as they get back in the door, a lot of dogs, what do? They lick their paws. So that's even worse. So next, please. Why organic? It's better and it makes a lot of sense to plants. On the left, you'll see a energy drink. Well, if I have an energy drink in the morning, I'm going to feel real powerful and hepped up for a few hours, and then a little bit later in the afternoon or right after lunch, it's going to be siesta time because I've run out of energy. Kind of what happens with chemical fertilizers. They stimulate really rapid growth, but at the same time, they create very shallow root systems. If, on the other hand, I should have had a V8, that the nutrition or the nutrients in a natural drink like V8 would stay with me for a good portion of the day longer. The analogy being that organics encourage a slower, even growth, and it encourages deeper roots. Next, please. It's better for your wallets. Now, I'll be the first to admit that organics is more expensive initially, but because it's building up your soil and it creates a more sustainable ecosystem for your lawn, you eventually need only basic services. In other words, you're making the environment healthier, so over time, you'll probably be able to back off on the number of treatments, whether it be fertilizer or pesticides, both of which we'll get to in just a moment. One of the principles of organics is your lawn's better able to resist disease, insects, and pests, so you won't need to continue this vicious cycle of, the chemical dependency that happens with, traditional chemical-based care. Next, please. And I don't think I need much of an explanation for this. It's a lot better for us, and especially for young children, because their bodies are much more susceptible to toxins in the environment. Next, please. So tonight, the rest of this presentation, you're going to hear me say chemical and organic quite a few times. So let's take a look at those two words. They're pretty both broad-based terms, and both of them have somewhat loosey-goosey definitions sometimes, and sometimes are used with unintended trickery through marketing. So chemical, what I really mean tonight is it's something that's synthetically produced. It's mass produced. It's not generally found in nature. It's manufactured by man. And let me say at this point, neither I nor Good Nature, we're not anti-chemical as much as we are pro-organic. There's no doubt many things in our lives have come from chemicals. And that's not to say they are all dangerous. I'll get to something about how we use chemicals and misuse them in a few minutes. So next, please. Thank you. So when I say organic, it's basically any substance containing carbon, but it's a lot, for our purposes, let's refer to it as plant and or animal-based ingredients. If you look at the slides or the little pictures, that's seaweed, that's corn, that's orange, which stands for citrus juice, or citric acid, and molasses. These are quite different than manufactured synthetic chemicals. The phrase that you see there, our organic products will be sustainable, good for the soil, and not harmful to people, pets, or planet. That's a guideline we use at Good Nature, and it's a guideline we wish that more companies, more lawn service people, and more people doing their own lawn care would think about and consider. Think of organic gardening as a way to have healthy and productive plants without the use of synthetic fertilizers, pesticides, and insecticides. Next, please. So now we're going to compare those two things, chemical and organic. Next. First, we'll look at chemical lawn fertilizer. Synthetic fertilizers are, like this very popular brand, they're already in a mineralized or powdered form, and they can be taken up by plants directly. All right. It does create greener, faster growing grass blades, but as it says on the slide, chemical fertilizers are water soluble, and this creates a lot of runoff into our waterways, and even evaporation into the air creates some issues too. The EPA estimates that 80% of what we put down on our lawns will end up running off into our creeks and streams and rivers. And no doubt, chemical lawn fertilizers do an excellent job of making grass grow. But as it says, it also kills a lot of beneficial and vital microbial, biological life that's in your soil. And it's like a quick fix, like your lawn's on, steroids. Next, with organic lawn fertilizers, again, these are plant or animal-based materials. They're providing material to feed the soil. They're putting things into the soil that are used by microbes, turned into usable food for the plants themselves. Organics, again, as I mentioned, are slower and longer lasting. They don't harm soil microbes. Excuse me. They are not harmful to soil microbes. All right. They actually encourage and help those microbes to survive and flourish. And organic fertilizers are a lot less water soluble, so they do not contribute in any way, shape, or form to water runoff into our streams. Next, please. All right, you've got a green grass. Now it's nice and green. You look out your window some morning and you see dandelions. And you look out the other window and you see on the other side plantain. Next, please. So here's what we're going to do. You can run to the store and get yourself some chemical weed and feed. This is simply a product that combines the fertilizer we just spoke about with other weed killing ingredients. Makes it easier, all right? And the fertilizer alone isn't the biggest risk. But the major problem with some of these products is that the proper timing for feeding a lawn is generally different from the ideal time for killing weeds. By applying some of these combination products, it means that there's probably going to be a lot of excess chemical that's likely, again, to run off into our local water. Next, please. With organic weed and feed products, again, they're plant and animal based, and the weed prevention part of organic weed and feed is already in the bag of organic fertilizer, and it's an ingredient that's called corn gluten meal. Amongst other things you see that's in the fertilizer, corn gluten meal, it's been shown to be a natural pre-emergent herbicide that helps prevent the germination, the germination of many types of different weed seeds. Next, please. Once, if we don't keep them from growing, now we've got to kill them. So you're looking here at a slide that is probably the number one sold and known weed killer product in the United States or the world. Roundup. Glyphosate is the main ingredient, and there's a lot of studies that have been done, and it's been shown that glyphosate's a probable human carcinogen. I mentioned a minute ago about the danger in the overuse, misuse, and the disposal of some of these chemical products, especially herbicides and insecticides. They are much more toxic than fertilizers and the other feed products. So when I say overuse, I mean, you remember that dandelion you saw? Well, you go out and you use the Roundup and you spray it on the dandelion. And next morning you wake up and you look out and you still see the dandelion. So you go out and you spray it again and again. Well, that overuse could have been prevented if you had read the label where it says may take up to so many hours to see effects. It isn't instantaneous. So that's whether that's overuse or misuse, that's debatable what it is. But the use of glyphosate is so prevalent, not just in residential, in our yards, but by big agriculture, big ag, I'll refer to them as. It's actually been found in our Cheerios, cashew cookies, and Ritz crackers. So that's not a good thing. Next, please. This slide shows two varieties of what are referred to as selective weed killers that are generally used on broadleaf weeds like we saw the dandelion and plantain. Selective means it will only kill the weeds. It should only kill the weeds, all right? Whereas the Roundup, just a slide previous, that is a non-selective, it will kill everything, grass and weeds. So that's something you really, another reason to read the label, make sure you're not going to be spraying something on your lawn that's going to have the opposite effect of what you intended. Next, please. You saw in very small print, and that's why I put them on this slide. Many of the commonly used pesticides contains, in addition to glyphosate, some chemicals called 2,4-D, dicamba, trichlorpyr, and of the 30 most commonly used pesticides, 16 are toxic to birds, 24 to fish, and 11 are deadly to bees. The responsible use by homeowners and landscapers would prevent a lot of that environmental and health problems. Herbicides today are among the most widely used type of pesticide in the world. Millions of tons are produced and billions of dollars made by chemical companies. And again, I have nothing against companies making a profit. We just wish they would be making a profit from materials and services that are much more environmentally and people friendly. Next, please. So if we look at organic weed control, a couple things. Weeds hate natural salt compounds. You'll see a lot of ingredients on a organic weed killer refer to some type of chloride product. Another thing that weeds hate is what's called chelated liquid iron. Chelated basically means that the iron is held in a liquid suspension and it's made available to the plants as a liquid. All right. This particular brand is this is again a selective weed killer. All right, it will kill broadleaf weeds. It will not harm the grass. Grass can tolerate an overload of iron, but most weeds, and including clover, if you don't like clover, will shrivel and die within just a few days. Next, please. And then we get to organic herbicides. This is one brand of a non-selective organic herbicide which kills both the weeds and the grass. So this would be an excellent alternative to a glyphosate-based product such as Roundup. However, again, read the label, know the ingredients. It is non-selective, so you'd want to use this on sidewalks or your patios or a driveway or some area that you don't want any grass or weeds. You want to get rid of the growth. And I'm glad to say that some of these products, this particular product is made by a company called Bonide, B-O-N-I-D-E, and they're a fabulous manufacturer. And you're able to purchase this in big box stores for many years. If you want to buy organic products, good luck. You shop high and low and look all over the city to find something. Well, it's changing slowly but surely. And a shameless plug, or you could purchase some of these products on our online store. Next, please. Okay. Some of Grandma's homemade herbicides. If you douse weeds with vinegar, if you use a high dosage of like a 20% acetic acid, which is basically what vinegar is, it'll kill the weed. All right. Might take multiple applications to fully kill some stubborn weeds. You can also mix into the vinegar some lawn detergent. If you Google homemade weed killers, you'll find all types of different concoctions, and you could pick or choose any one of them, and they probably will work. Sometimes, though, the problem is, as with the vinegar, it might kill the leafy greens on the perennial weeds like dandelions or crabgrass, but it's not really probably going to reach down and kill the roots, so the plants may come back again the following season. So half a dozen here, 6 here, half a dozen there, whatever the expression is. Next, please. And then when all else fails, put your boots on, grab a spade, get a weeder, go out and dig that son of a gun out of the ground. All right, if it bothers you that much. Or go to the store and buy what you see on the right, and what I refer to it as, and I think it's called a speedy weedy, but there are a number of different types of products that basically you put this over the dandelion and you push it into the ground, twist it a few times, you pull it up, and out comes the dandelion, root and all. And they really do work. So, and it's a lot of fun too. Get a lot of satisfaction out of doing this. Some days I feel frustrated. I go out, pop a few dandelions out of the ground, and I feel a whole lot better. And they didn't use any chemicals. So, next, please. I believe I mentioned some of the marketing that goes on by the big companies and lawn care services. These are just a couple examples real quick of stuff I've gotten in the mail just this past week. And I think it's the type of marketing we all have to be kind of careful of. Here's the all-American family sitting on the lawn, not just mom and dad, but a little toddler and a dog. The only problem with this is if they had put chemicals down, studies have shown that certain pesticides and insecticides can remain on the surface for many days, many weeks. Next, please. And another one came. Now, this is even cuter, right? A little girl with her dog. Well, I think they should probably have shoes on unless they are using, unless the lawn's been treated with organic materials. The worst one, not the worst one, but I think it's absolutely ludicrous is I see the truck driving around with a picture of a horse on the side of the truck with a caption. This is a lawn service company. With the caption, it says something like, grass so green or grass so good you want to eat it. And first of all, that doesn't make any sense. And two, if you know anything about horses, I don't think anybody that owns a horse would ever spray anything on their field if a horse was going to eat it. So, all right, that's just my opinion. I'll get off my soapbox now. Next, please. We'll keep this moving. So how do you make sure something you want to use in your yard is organic? These two sites I've used for some of my own presentations in the past number of years. They're both very reputable organizations. You have to be on the lookout for what's referred to as greenwashing. Those claims by companies and products that claim to be organic. Like on the fruit juice, 10% fruit juice. Ooh, wow, that's really exciting. It's been shown they found a major manufacturer of fertilizer that threw some composted chicken manure into the bag of fertilizer, as it was being processed, so that they could claim contains organic material. Okay, you have to be careful of those things. But these are sites, so you can, the best defense against this type of greenwashing, be a smart consumer. Read the labels on the back. Don't just look and believe the big bold words and the warm and fuzzy images on the front. You come across some of those names of chemicals I showed you a few minutes ago. Don't buy that stuff or don't use it, in my opinion. If you don't know about a particular ingredient you see on the label, go to one of these websites. It'll give you some information. It'll help you make an intelligent decision. Do I really want to be using this stuff in my own yard? All right. Next, please. Oh, go back just a moment. If you can.
Hold on. Let me.
That's okay. I could, a couple other things about if you decide you want to have a lawn care or a lawn service company do your lawn for you, use the same care. There's a lot of companies out there, just like with products, jumping on the green bandwagon. Oh yeah, we're organic. You have to read the fine print. Call the company, say, well, what type of organic, what's in your organic products? All right. What do you use to kill weeds? How do you deal with this? What's your organic solution? And whether, it's buying the product or using a lawn care service, I stress, do your homework. Read the labels. Take advantage of company helplines and their websites. Go on their website. See what they're saying about the product. And just like anything else in this consumer-oriented world, if something sounds too good to be true, it's probably just marketing babble. The two nonprofit organizations I just had up on the screen the really good information. So I've gone over a whole lot of stuff, whether some of it might be completely new to you. If you've been interested in organics or you're practicing some of it now, that's great. But either way, let's keep calm and let's go organic. So next, here's the top 10 almost no cost DIY tips. So we're going to look at some lawn care practices that are basically free and don't require you to buy any fertilizer, pesticides if you don't want to. All you have to do is invest a little bit of time, and attention to how you're going to take care of your lawn. Next, please. So, tip number 1, lightly rake your lawn. This is a good thing to do to prepare your lawn for new growth. You probably still have a few fallen leaves on the ground, other winter, debris. I kind of look at it as like, you get out of bed in the morning and you rub your head and tousle your hair just to wake up. Well, it's kind of what you're doing to your lawn. You're giving it a little bit of air, a little bit of breathing room. You're going to pull up those leaves that literally got plastered to the ground and give your grass plants a chance to sprout. Next. Oh, and I mentioned everything is free. This is one. However, if you are going to fertilizer, now is the time to put down your first spring feeding. Use a spring blend that's formulated for your lawn's needs at this time of year. There are different blends of fertilizer and products for different times of the year. When you get to, so it's jumping ahead of myself, sorry. It's recommended that you make your second spring feeding around Memorial Day. Most do-it-yourself programs suggest 4 feedings a year, with these first 2 in the spring and then the other 2 in early fall, one in around Labor Day, and then one in late fall, Thanksgiving, or even later. Some lawn service programs have a couple optional treatments in the summer, and these are more for insect and disease and drought control really than feeding. Next, please. Here's one that's really so easy to do. A lot of you are probably getting your mower tuned up, pulling it out of the garage as we speak. A lot of people check the spark plug, make sure it's running right, but too many people forget to get the blade sharpened. On the left, you'll see a blade of grass that's been cut by that blade on the right. It's duller than a butter knife. It looks like a piece of celery that you broke in half. When a blade of grass is like this, it loses a lot of moisture. It's open, it invites insect damage. And quite frankly, it looks bad. You've ever gone by a lawn and it looks all brownish on top? Well, that's what's causing it. So make sure you get your mower blade at the start of the season. And if you hit a couple rocks, get it sharpened again. It'll cost you a couple dollars, but it'll be well worth the couple dollars it'll take. Next, please. And this is probably should be number 1 or maybe number 2. I don't know why I put it number 4. Mow your lawn high. The length of your grass impacts its health, and it makes it a lot less susceptible to weeds. Why? It's blocking out sunlight. It's blocking out air and moisture that the weeds below need to germinate and grow. This is just another one of the basic principles of organic lawn care. Good high grass is healthy and it helps prevent weeds. Now, if you're used to a neat manicured lawn, you may have to adjust to this kind of new look. You can see on the side right now, this time of year, you're cutting your lawn about 2.5 inches. Summer, I basically put in the summertime, once it gets past Memorial Day, that time of year when you're cutting it every 3, 4, 5 days, I put my settings up to the highest height I can. And that's how I finish out the rest of the summer. Then comes fall, I lowered a little bit. And when I do my final cut of the year, last year it wasn't until December. Man, that was only 3 or 4 months ago. It was quite low. Um, but the University of Maryland did a study. They found that healthy, tall lawn helps. It's the best way to prevent crabgrass. You know, you mentioned crabgrass to somebody who likes their lawn, they go nuts. Well, let your grass grow, and it'll help prevent that crabgrass. And I don't know if I mentioned it before, but the higher your grass blade grows, the deeper the roots go into the soil. If you cut your grass 2 inches or 3 inches, that's how deep the roots will be. If you let your lawn grow up to 4 inches, the roots go deeper. And guess what? In the heat of the summer, your lawn, when it's looking for water, is certainly going to be glad it had deep roots. Next, please. And I'm going to move along here so we have time for questions and hopefully an answer from me. How's that? Tip number 5, don't bag your clippings, mulch them. By mulching your clippings, you're returning valuable nitrogen and organic material right back into the soil. It's like free fertilizer. And contrary to popular belief out there, grass clippings themselves do not cause thatch. Right? Another small tip, if you use a power edger or some type of edging machine on your sidewalks and driveways, do it lightly and only do it when it's really needed. You put some deep trenches on the side between the lawn and your concrete, you're only given a place for seeds to fall in and a perfect place to grow once they find a nice landing spot. Next, please. Reseed your bare spots, because if you don't reseed them, I guarantee there'll be weeds there within a few weeks or another month or so. The easiest way, and you can find these at any hardware, not any store, but many stores carry what are called lawn patch repair mix kits. It's a 5 or 10 pound bag of grass seed. In it, it has the nutrients, the feed, the fertilizer already, and it has the mulch. So you just basically put it on the ground, kind of smooth it out. You don't even have to work it in. You can basically just throw it down on the ground and keep it moist for 3 or 4 weeks, and the grass will grow. All right. Not anything difficult about it. If you don't want to buy the patch kit, use a garden weasel, rough up the soil a little bit, lightly work the seed into the soil, put on a top, a light layer of compost, and you're all done. Grass seed will grow if you buy good stuff. By that, I mean, don't go to Ollie's and buy a 5 pound bag of grass seed for $5, because you're probably going to get 2 pounds of grass seed, 2 pounds of weed seed, and a pound of filler. All right. Next, please. Water properly and consistently. If you decide to water your lawn, do it consistently. Your grass needs 1 to 1.5 inches of water per week, and it can actually survive on as little as a ½ inch of water in a month. Overwatering is a bigger concern than underwatering. And a even easier rain gauge than the one you see in the slide, use a cat food or a tuna fish can as a rain gauge. And after a rain, or if you're watering, if that can is filled, that's an inch of water. So you're probably good for another week. And remember, this summer, during July and August, lawns in Northeast Ohio will naturally go dormant. All right, they're not dead, they're dormant. There's a big difference. It's nature's way of saying it's not a good time to be growing, so save your strength and energy for the cooler weather when fall returns. Water deeper and infrequently. So let the water go deep into the roots. Rule of thumb, if you want to follow, water twice a week, applying that 1 to 1.5 inches of water. And Next slide, please. Yeah, water in the AM, not in the PM. Why? If you water in the AM, it's a lot cooler. The water is going to have a chance to really penetrate and sink into the soil. If you water in the hot afternoon, too much of it's going to evaporate before it has a chance to get into the soil. And if you water in the PM, the water remaining on the grass blades overnight will cause fungus, mold, diseases. So if you can, again, water in the AM. Next, please. And these next couple tips are what I'd refer to as optional. Aeration is exactly what it sounds like. It's improving the natural circulation of the air, water, and nutrients through the soil. And a liquid aeration product is pretty easy to apply. You either use a hose-in sprayer that comes with the product or a handheld pump sprayer. There's also another kind of, and this kind, liquid aeration is preferred at this time of year over what's called core aeration. I forgot to include a picture, but it's those big machines that make a whole bunch of racket and bounce all over your yard and pull up cores. I call them, they look like goose turds and leave holes in your yard. That's aeration. It does, again, improve the circulation and all that, but we believe in most situations, most lawns, liquid aeration is probably the way to go. It's longer lasting and it's putting in a lot more, it's returning a lot of trace elements and micronutrients back into the soil. Next, please. Okay, if you really want to know what's in the soil beneath your feet, do a soil chemistry test. You know, before you invest time and money in any soil supplements or, you know, determine what, if anything, is needed. These chemistry tests will measure your soil's acidity, its pH level, in other words, how much nitrogen, potassium, calcium, and other nutrients are in the soil. You can get DIY kits that you can literally do at home. They don't tell you a whole lot, or you can collect some soil, as it says, from 6 to 8 different spots and mail it off to a lab. They'll tell you a little bit more information. Some of it may be useful and some of it won't make a whole lot of sense to anybody. Trust me. If you really want to get the lowdown nitty gritty on your dirt, have a soil biology test performed. This is going to tell you, how alive your soil is, what types of microbes and bacteria are living there. They're on the pricey side, and quite frankly, they're probably not necessary. But if you're really curious, you'd probably be amazed that I've heard there's, in a teaspoon of dirt, there's hundreds of thousands of microbes and bacteria. So it's a living ecosystem. It isn't dirt, it's soil. So next, and we're almost done. These are just some of my favorite tips. Set some realistic expectations. That applies to life in general, doesn't it? Have some patience with your lawn and with your kids or your grandkids. Make sure you read the labels. And if you read them, follow the instructions. Don't just read them for the fun. They're actually quite boring. And then if you do some of the things we've talked about, you'll be amazed. Keep your eyes out for butterflies and birds returning and the animals. They know that you've been doing something different. They probably sense an organic yard before anybody else would. So, and then enjoy whatever effort you put in and the results. Okay, and the next couple slides are just some social commentary by me. Next, please. This is from one of my favorite movies, The Lorax. If any of you have seen it, it has a pretty strong statement about the environment and sustainability in the world. And at the very end, One of the favorite expressions is the Lorax drops down from the sky, looks up at, I can't remember what his name was, but he says, "You done good, Beanpole." And it just, you know, that's what we need to have more people doing in their backyards. You done good. And next slide. Do the best you can until you know better. Then when you know better, do better. And with that, go on to the next slide. And I think that will be, with that, thanks for helping to help us make the world a better place, one organic person at a time. That concludes my slide presentation. And with that, I will turn my camera back on and reappear for your viewing pleasure. There we go. Well, whatever. Okay, so Heather, are there any questions? I can't hear you.
Sorry.
Now I can.
I was trying to get my question box to get bigger. Am I still
Okay.
screen sharing? I think I am. Let's see. I can stop screen sharing. There. Alrighty. Oh, go back thing. So I had one person, pretty much a comment that they used the burnout before, but they said it didn't really work unless you used it, gave it twice a dose.
Yes.
So, I mean,
That's an
it's
excellent
probably a
point.
normal thing.
Well, yes, organics. I guess the way I explained it once is that organic products are made to help things grow, not necessarily to, make things to kill things. A lot of organic products are definitely not as strong or as toxic as some of their chemical counterparts. So yes, you may have to go out and spray, hit that weed again with another dose of burnout. All right. That's just a part of, that's where the little bit of patience, okay, have a commitment, and it will, in the long run, be better. So, any
Yeah,
other
and
questions?
that was the only one that I have so far, but I guess I have a few questions of my own if you don't mind.
Oh, please.
Um, I know one thing, like at my last AmeriCorps position, I had to do a few treatments with glyphosate, which was lots of fun.
Glyphosate.
Not really. Yeah, not really fun. But yeah, like for a good example, it doesn't always work either right away. Like we had to go out and spray things again after we douse things. So
Sure.
it really just, I feel like it depends. Oh, somebody wanted to know, how does boiling water kill weeds? Kind of interested in that one
Well,
too.
it basically is frying it to death. I mean, it's killing the top part that you see, definitely. I mean, you pour boiling water on some type of plant, it's just literally going to fry it. Um, Unfortunately, it's probably not going to have a whole lot of effect below the surface. Therefore, if it's a pesky weed like a dandelion or some other type of perennial weed, it probably will return. But on one hand, quite frankly, I'd rather have somebody keep pouring boiling water on a weed and have to keep doing it than using some of the chemicals. So again, it's a trade-off, all right? And sometimes, like I said, your best way to get rid of weed, a weed for good, is mechanically, physically, get it out of the ground, get as much of the root as possible. So
I would definitely
that's the
agree with
fun,
that.
that's the fun part.
Yeah. The best time to pull weeds is right after it rains.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Um, oh no. Somebody wants to know, how do you get rid of moss in your yard?
Ah, you
Now,
don't.
see me, I'm like, give me all the moss. I'll take it.
Um, there's an expression that I use quite frequently to that question. Moss is your yard's way of saying, don't try to grow grass here. It's probably too shady, too wet. If you want to trim back a bush or a shrub or trim a few branches out of the tree, try and dry it out. But moss won't very often grow in a completely dry area. So I have an area in the back of my yard that it's under a tree, it's on the north side of the tree. You know what? I'm not going to waste my time trying to plant grass there. So I put in some river stone and some nice flowering annual plants, and hey, the moss is, the plants are happy. I don't have the moss, but I know better than to try and plant grass there.
Okay. Somebody wants to know, is burning weeds effective? I feel like if you're burning weeds, I wouldn't say to do it unless you
Um,
are professional.
yeah, it sounds, they must have tons of weeds or they're grassy weeds or whatever. What I've always been told is the best way to get rid of weeds is to put it into like a black plastic bag or some type of airtight bag and keep it in there for a number of days till it's completely dead and then throw it away. I mean, don't throw it in your backyard. Um, I I know that I don't know the full complete answer. I don't think it would, in most cases, cause any harm. Although I think burning the weeds is probably more of a safety issue than anything else. But
Yeah, because they were saying that they put in here using a propane torch. And even then, same
you mean,
thing.
okay, I'm sorry.
Okay.
I
So at first I was thinking, like prescribed burns that they do in the parks, but I'm like,
Yeah,
oh, that's
I
that's
I
intense.
understand now. Yes, they make the propane torches that you hold down on the weed and you burn it out of the crack of the driveway. Again, I guess if you got it hot enough and depending on the weed and how deep its roots were, um, I think it would probably, yes, it's definitely going to kill the weed. Will it kill the total weed or what's underneath the weed? With annual weeds, it'd probably do a good job because annual weeds, you don't have to worry about them coming back. Uh, Weeds are survivors. That's why they're in our yards. So, um,
All right, so I have someone, um, they put loose tea leaves in their flower bed to nourish the soil. Is
hmm.
that a good thing or not a good thing? I'll admit,
In
my grandma
general,
used to do this, so.
yeah, I'm not a botanist and or anything like that. I don't claim to be a 100% expert in all types of gardening. My personal opinion is it's organic. Tea has a lot of flavonoids, a lot of stuff happening in it, and you throw it in your yard and it rots and it decomposes. It's not going to do any harm. I know there are certain things that, depending on ornamental plants and depending on the type of soil requirements, you have to be careful with the acidity or the neutrality of the soil. And if you throw something out there that's high, has a high pH level and it decomposes, it might not be good. But for example, I mean, every morning I make coffee and I take out the old packet of ground coffee and I open the sliding door and I throw it out into my backyard. And in a couple of days they dry up and I shake the coffee grounds out into the yard. So, and I do that mainly. Uh, well, I do it actually because that way my lawn stays awake.
All right, here's
And
a
if
good
anybody believes
question.
me, somebody better be snickering at that. No, it's going to be solid material that'll help aerate when it finally sinks
Mhm.
into the soil. So,
All right, here's probably our last question. How do
no.
you stop invasive tuber type weeds that are growing in a large field? This made
Wow.
me think of lesser
That's,
celandine, which is an
yeah,
invasive plant, and it's
yeah. Uh, that's like one, two, three strikes, you're out. Yeah. Invasive plants just by the nature of them, that's why they're called invasive, because they're almost impossible to stop. Um, you know, there are, for every weed, for every plant, they have a cycle of growth. And I know that if you go to more of a gardening site or you talk to a botanist, they'll tell you that to get rid of, to try and control certain weeds, there are certain times of the year that it's best to try and attack them. Okay. I work at Cleveland Metro Parks in the summer, and they have a big problem with the grapevines that climb up the tree. Well, before I was done for the summer last year, I was cutting a lot of grapevines because that's the best time to do it, not when they're, just growing like wild banshees in the spring and summer. So everything has a cycle, everything has its strong points, weak points. Try to attack a weed at its weakest point. So, all
Yeah,
right.
I know they're like lesser celandine, pretty much the best way they say to do is pretty much dig it up and you have to get
Yeah.
all of the tubers and it's
Yeah.
really hard. So,
It's a
um,
big,
I have one person who says that they use organic, but unfortunately it killed butterflies in our yard. How do we prevent it from killing butterflies? It
well,
was a
I,
combination of oil and garlic. I think there might have been okay, yeah,
yeah,
oil and garlic.
I'm, I can't say I can really answer that question. I don't have enough experience myself, not knowing what type of oil it is or anything like that. Now I know garlic is a natural mosquito repellent. Um, I don't know how they came across this mixture. Um, so I really, I wish I had an answer, but I don't know. I really don't.
Yeah, I know garlic's not like I know like at least my vet says like you shouldn't give your dog garlic. So
Yeah.
I'm not really sure like what it would do to an insect or not, or
Oh,
maybe it's the oil that.
if it, and maybe it was just bad timing. I mean, I could see if there was something of an oil and it was sprayed on a bush as that butterfly was laying its eggs or its, whatever it
Mhm.
is, that it inhibited the growth of that. But I haven't had any experience with that. I'm sorry.
I'm also wondering if like the oil prevented the butterfly from like being able to drink nectar with its proboscis, like if it
Sure.
clogged it up or something,
Did,
and then it just starved.
did something to its
Um,
wings and wasn't able to fly. Yeah.
yeah, that would be. Maybe we'll do some research in the morning and see if I can find an answer. Kind of
I'll,
interested.
I'll check around at our office too, see if anybody's ever heard of that. If I find anything, I'll let you know, Heather.
Okay, that'd be great.
Okay.
Alrighty. And that is all the questions that we have
All
time
right.
for. So I'm gonna say we can be done for tonight. And
All
thank you
right.
everybody, and thank you Mel, and everybody enjoy the rest of your evening.
All right.
Have
Thank
a
you,
good
everybody,
one.
for
You're
sitting in.
welcome.
Take care.
Bye.
Bye bye.